A short time ago, the United States military began major combat operations in Iran.
As tensions in the Middle East continue to escalate by the hour, recent claims from Iranian sources have caused a major stir in the international community. According to Iranian media and some military sources, the country's armed forces launched 4 ballistic missiles targeting the U.S. aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln. This claim is interpreted as a reflection of the retaliatory messages frequently voiced by the Tehran administration in recent days. Media outlets close to Iran argue that the attack was carried out with specially developed anti-ship ballistic missiles, and that the U.S. military presence in the region is under serious threat. However, there has been no official confirmation or denial from the U.S. Navy or U.S. Central Command so far. The silence of the authorities increases uncertainty about the veracity of the claims, and further escalates tensions in diplomatic and military circles. The U.S. Navy has a large defense network in the Persian Gulf and surrounding areas, consisting of 2 large aircraft carrier strike groups and accompanying destroyers and cruisers. These ships are protected by dozens of fighter jets, advanced radar systems, and multi-layered air defense shields. Experts emphasize that sinking such a powerful military platform directly would be extremely difficult, but point out that targeting critical systems could temporarily disable the ship. It is noted that damage to aircraft launch systems or radar infrastructure in particular could bring all operations to a halt. Military analysts state that if Iran had actually carried out such an attack, it would have required advanced intelligence and targeting support. Satellite imagery, radar tracking, and electronic intelligence data are considered to have played a decisive role in this process. This raises questions about whether Iran acted alone or received external support. It is emphasized that in the modern warfare environment, information superiority has become as important as firepower. The Tehran administration, meanwhile, continues to make statements highlighting its recent military successes. The Iranian government shared images of what it claims is a downed USMQ-9 Reaper drone with the public. State television and semi-official agencies claimed that the attacks were carried out by the Revolutionary Guards and carried a deterrent message. Sources close to the Revolutionary Guards announced that there is no definitive information yet on whether the missiles directed at the USS Abraham Lincoln reached their target, but that new statements would be made shortly. According to experts, Iran has been operating within the framework of an asymmetric warfare doctrine for a long time. This strategy aims to wear down the opponent's defense systems by simultaneously using missiles, unmanned aerial vehicles, naval assets, and electronic warfare methods. The goal is not to completely destroy large military platforms, but rather to render them temporarily inoperable, thereby creating political and military pressure. Recent developments indicate that this doctrine is beginning to be implemented in the field. Another dimension of the tension is the developments on the Israeli front. Israeli authorities announced that ballistic missiles allegedly launched from Iran had hit the Beit Shemesh area. Images shared on social media show some buildings collapsed, shelters directly hit, and neighborhood residents fleeing the area. While Israeli officials claim the attacks targeted civilians, Iran denies these allegations. Meanwhile, the Israeli Defense Forces announced that they had carried out extensive air operations targeting strategic targets in Tehran, the capital of Iran. Shared drone and reconnaissance footage shows explosions occurring at various points in the city. The Israeli army claims that these attacks were carried out to weaken Iran's military infrastructure and gain air superiority. Officials state that the operations are preventive in nature and aim to protect national security. There is also notable activity on the U.S. front. U.S. Central Command announced that a Jamaran-class corvette belonging to Iran was targeted and neutralized near the Gulf of Oman as part of Operation Epic Fury. According to the statement, the ship sank off the coast of Chabahar port. While the Washington administration emphasized that this operation was carried out to ensure regional security, there has been no comprehensive response from Tehran yet. All of these developments indicate that the long-standing tension in the Middle East has entered a new and more dangerous phase. Iran's ballistic missile claims, losses in Israel, and direct U.S. military operations increase the risk of the crisis turning into a multi-sided conflict. International observers emphasize that statements from Washington, Tehran, and Tel Aviv in the coming days will determine the direction of the process, warning that if diplomatic efforts fail, the region could see a broader and more difficult-to-control military escalation. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu described this operation as a response to Iran's nuclear threat. Washington described it as a major war effort. This is not a symbolic attack, but a strategic signal. Furthermore, any military signal always has consequences. It didn't take long. Iran declared its right to legitimate defense, aggression, and sovereignty violations. A wave of counterattacks followed. Drones moved, sirens sounded, missiles were launched, Israeli radars kicked in, and the story spread immediately. Hundreds of targets and hundreds of attacks. However, in modern warfare, information often moves faster than verification. In fact, Iran used unmanned aerial vehicles and missiles in retaliation. The tension was already there, but the number of details keeps growing. The question that follows is whether Iran is preparing for a major conflict. The Revolutionary Guards are portrayed as being in a very high position. Airspace is limited, and air defenses have been strengthened. The Moscow administration has made it clear, with explicit messages, that it stands with Tehran against the pressure led by Israel and the U.S. And this stance has the potential to reshape the balance of power in the region. In his assessment of recent developments, Russian President Vladimir Putin emphasized that Iran has a legitimate right to self-defense and harshly criticized the military interventions of Western countries. According to Kremlin sources, the Moscow administration has significantly increased its diplomatic and military contacts with Iran during the recent crisis. Russian officials state that intelligence sharing, defense technologies, and regional security issues were discussed in the talks with Tehran. Sources close to the Kremlin say Russia's determination not to abandon Iran is part of a broader strategic struggle against the West. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, meanwhile, argued in his statements that the military activities of the U.S. and Israel in the region threaten stability. Lavrov argued that the pressure on Iran is contrary to international law and said that Moscow will continue to provide political and diplomatic support on all issues concerning Tehran's security. Russian diplomatic sources signaled that a more active policy in favor of Iran will also be pursued at the United Nations. Military circles, however, believe that Russia's support is not limited to political statements. According to experts, Moscow has recently provided Iran with technical expertise in defense systems, radar technologies, and electronic warfare. Increasing joint exercises and deepening military coordination are also on the agenda. These steps show that military cooperation between Russia and Iran has now transformed from a temporary partnership into a long-term strategic alliance. Russia's stance is also seen as a reflection of its global power struggle with the West. With its relations with the US and Europe seriously strained after the war in Ukraine, Moscow aims to establish a new balance in the Middle East through Iran. According to analysts, by supporting Tehran, the Kremlin seeks both to limit Washington's influence in the region and to strengthen its vision of a multipolar world order. On the Iranian front, this support from Russia is welcomed. The Tehran administration defines its growing cooperation with Moscow as a strategic partnership and wants to show that it is not alone against the West. Iranian officials argue that Russia's political and military support increases the country's regional deterrence. It is noted that Moscow's statements, especially during the recent crisis, have strengthened Tehran's hand at the diplomatic table. In contrast, there is serious unease on the U.S. and Israeli side regarding Russia's support for Iran. Western officials claim that Moscow's policy is fueling conflicts in the region and escalating tensions. The Washington administration describes the Russia-Iran rapprochement as a dangerous axis in terms of global security and signals that new sanctions may be on the agenda. According to international observers, Russia's open support for Iran is complicating crises in the Middle East. conflicts in the region are no longer confined to local actors, but have become a direct arena of competition between global powers. Moscow's alignment with Tehran is further sharpening tensions between the US-Israel axis and the Russia-Iran axis. As a result, Russia's strong support for Iran in recent developments is seen as having the potential to affect not only relations between the two countries, but also all regional and global balances. The Kremlin's strategy is interpreted as heralding a new power bloc in the Middle East, with diplomatic crises and military tensions expected to increase in the coming period. If a comprehensive agreement cannot be reached between the parties, Russia's support for Iran,